Hello and welcome to Vintage Pens for the Modern User. Today we are going to discuss the Parker 45 fountain pen. Parker came out with this fountain pen in 1960, and it was the first fountain pen by Parker to use the cartridge for a filling mechanism. Not so much a mechanism, so much as a delivery method for getting fountain pen ink into the pen in a very convenient to use method. They also developed the converter to be used as well for those who still preferred bottled ink. For this reason, I think the Parker 45 fountain pen is a very good starting point for those who use modern pens but want to start to explore something a little bit more vintage. Now, we are in the era when some people may debate whether a pen is truly vintage or not, and what makes a pen vintage or not is a subject for another video entirely. However, at this time, the rollerball, which in the United States certainly was one of the reasons for the demise of fountain pens, had not fully established itself as a reliable writing instrument. Eversharp came out with the rollerball, and it was unreliable, and the ink it contained was a sticky mess. It was certainly also not put in writing instruments that were disposable, and so investing in a rollerball that didn't work well was not something users were prone to do. So the fountain pen continued to be a prominent writing instrument even into the early part of the 1960s. And so as a result, I think the Parker 45 deserves a closer look. So let's dive in and see what makes this fountain pen unique and why it's something you should consider adding to your arsenal of writing instruments as a modern user. Here we have the Parker 45 fountain pen. As I mentioned, this pen was created by Parker as its first fountain pen, to use what's known as the cartridge mechanism for filling, and was also available with the converter. The converters and cartridges that Parker designed are proprietary for the writing instruments. However, they have not changed that design since their inception, and as a result, you can still buy the converters and cartridges today, making these very usable vintage pens. The plastics that were used were quite reliable and durable, and the pens have a nice slip cap mechanism that seals very tightly on the pen when it's not used, so it can be clipped in a pocket with comfort and ease, and of course posts on the end of the pen for a very balanced and comfortable writing experience. These pens had a 14 karat gold or stainless steel nib, and the nibs were available in a quite variety of assortment of writing tips, ranging all the way from extra fine, known as a needlepoint nib, all the way up to an extra broad italic. So you can see, if you are interested in adding some flair, this is a good pen, and they are very affordable and very reliable, easy to service, easy to own, and easy to use. They came in a few different colors and a few different caps. I'm going to show you some of those first, and then we'll use one, of course, as always in this episode. Here we have a midnight blue barrel. These are plastic barrels. You see here is an olive green barrel. You can see the trim is slightly different on the two caps. They're both stainless steel caps, but one sports a gold colored clip and a gold colored clutch ring here where the cap meets the barrel. You can see here I also will have black as an option. I don't have in front of me, but one pen that was very popular was the Flighter, which was a stainless steel pen where the barrel and the cap were all stainless steel and matched. In addition to that, they also made a gold-filled, very lovely, very elegant, higher model of the Parker 45. You could have engraved your initials here on the indicia if you wanted to. So certainly there was a range that you could explore when these pens were new, and as well today, in terms of what you might want for your own flair. Turns out I was mistaken when I said I don't have a Flighter. I do have a Flighter, and here it is. So you can see that lovely stainless steel barrel. This one has the gold colored clip and the gold colored band here to hold the clip in place, the cap in place rather. If you go across the pond, Parker was made in the UK as well, and you could find some rather lovely machine turned patterns that were available. This one here, quite lovely. This one is another option in that style. So if you are somebody who wants to delve from using to collecting, or using what you collect, you can see you have a nice array of options. They also made something called the Coronet series, which were also metal, much like the Flighter, but they had a few different color variations that you can see here, that you could find, and you could be delighted to find and delighted to use. Again, very approachable, very usable, very reliable fountain pens that Parker made. So let's get into seeing first how they're made, their components, as I like to show you, and then we'll use one, because that is, of course, the point of these videos, is the Parker 45 vintage pen intended for the modern user. So here's a black one I have. Basic components, of course, are the cap and the barrel, which unscrews to reveal a filling mechanism. This one has a Parker squeeze converter in it, which would have a sack in, and the sacks could be replaced. These could be serviced. They're a little finicky to service, and most people would probably rather purchase a cartridge or purchase a modern piston type converter to go into the pen. And as mentioned, these had a variety of nibs, and you can take the nib unit out of the pen by unscrewing it and replace it. This can be further disassembled, but really would not be necessary to disassemble beyond this, where you could see the nib alone. These units were actually sold and available from Parker. So again, you could have a fine and you could have a broad, or you could have an extra fine and you could have a medium metallic. The pens were not terribly expensive, and so it wouldn't be bad to just have two pens. But again, in the attempt to show the modern user why vintage has some benefits with the multitude of options available with nibs and expressivity, this just demonstrates how that could happen. You could simply have one pen, and you could have a few of these units here that you could screw into the end. And you had your favorite, let's say you wanted to have one of these nice machine etched. These are a little more expensive to acquire. So you could have that, and you could also have a couple different writing options to use along with your favorite pen without having to buy two fountain pens. Of course, if you're a collector or anywhere into the rabbit hole of the hobby, having two fountain pens is nothing to be ashamed of. So, without further ado, let us use a Parker 45. To do so, of course, we will need a piece of paper, and we will need a bottle of ink for this one. I don't have any cartridges handy. If you had a cartridge, you would snap that in, and you would want to give it a little bit of time for the ink to make its way down through the channels, into the feed, and into the nib. Some people can be a little impatient about that process and think, oh, my pen's not working right, something's got it clogged up, etc., etc. I just put a new cartridge in, why won't it work? Well, give it a little bit of time for the ink to be drawn down into the feed and into the nib before you have determined that your pen is not working. If you, however, have a piston filling converter, as I have in this pen, you will, of course, unscrew the barrel to reveal that. Some people like to take converters out. I don't advise doing that because it is friction fit, and the removal and reattachment of the converter over and over and over again can actually wear that friction fitting down, and to where you won't get such a good fit on the pen, and you could wind up with some leakage or just the pen not working as well as it should. So leave the converter in place once you've decided you're going to use one for a while, and simply fill the pen with the converter in the pen, putting it in the bottle of ink. Again, I like to use inks that are that are reliable, that are tried and true. Parker still makes ink. You could certainly find yourself using Parker Quink. I use Waterman. This is Waterman's Mysterious Glue. So you would twist the piston all the way down and then all the way back to fill the pen converter with ink. And then you can, of course, dry, and as always, screw that cap back on that bottle so we can avoid any inky disasters caused by that. And we're not done because, of course, you want to put the pen back together and get it ready to go. So here we go. Parker 45 fountain pen from around 1960. And I will tell you, this nib is delightful. This is a medium nib, I would suspect, based on the way it's writing. It's very smooth. As I've said in other videos, I'm a left-handed person and I do tend to be an overwriter. But if you let a pen do what it's supposed to do, then you will find it to be quite smooth and pleasant. And even a left-handed person should not be discouraged from using a fountain pen. Let the pen do the work. Fountain pens write under their own pressure, under their own weight. You don't need to push down. If you find yourself having an unpleasant writing experience, it could be you've become accustomed to using a ballpoint pen, which requires you to press into the paper. This is not the case with a fountain pen. It requires no pressure at all to use, and using pressure can eventually damage the nib, and it certainly will render a less than pleasant writing experience. So here we have the Parker 45, lovely writing instrument, certainly one that I would encourage anyone who is into modern pens and wants a quick and easy transition into the world of vintage to take a closer look at, because again, that cartridge and converter mechanism is one you're probably familiar with. You can find them in a variety of colors and styles to suit your taste, and you can find them with a plethora of tips for a lot of different writing grades, again, from needlepoint all the way up to an extra broad italic. So I hope you do enjoy this video. I will be continuing the series, but Parker 45, what a lovely writing instrument it is. It was considered a student pen, but as you can see, they gave you some options that were well above what would be considered a student grade. So take a close look. Parker 45 is a vintage pen that I think every modern user should have in their collection.